Let's get going with it. Welcome to the Coincidence Cafe. We're going to have a good time doing some music coincidences today, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have your own stories to be able to tell. We're gonna end officially at 12:30. But some of us can stay on longer. I have to get going by 1:45. If Ken Bell, and thank you, Ken Bell, for being our technology person today. And depending how long Ken can stay too, we can do some chatting afterwards. And please right now put where you are from in the chat. It's just very nice to see where everybody's from, and especially any new people from Charlottesville, I'd like to be able to see if you're here. So please put where you are right now in the chat. We like to see just how much of a reach we have globally. And I'm going to put in the chat a link to be able to donate to the Coincidence Project, because this is a nonprofit, and as a nonprofit, we don't make money. We've got to be able to find ways to get money, and the donations, no matter how small, are very much appreciated. So please consider donating to the Coincidence Project as you tell us where you are from. We will have two breakouts today, as we usually do. And please keep in mind that we only record during the full group as we are now. And you'll be able to see today's meeting on our new YouTube channel, the Coincidence Project YouTube channel. And again, only the large group, and the small groups will break out into. We'll have 2 or 3 people in each group. And the idea in the breakout groups is for you to be able to tell each other stories that perhaps you are reminded of by our icebreaker question. And the icebreaker question has to do with art. And what art or arts do you practice, create, really enjoy as a fan? Like music, art, architecture, dance, photography, divination, like tarot cards and the I Ching. Well, this is just to get you thinking, because we're trying to be able to see what kinds of coincidences you may have involving such things. But today, most of our focus will be on music coincidences. I hope you have some to tell. I will be telling some of them. I'll tell one second, but the first we will have Greg Fitting tell us a series of his own experiences with music coincidences. Some of that might be not quite what Greg and I will talk about, but we'd still like to hear what you have in mind and what you've experienced with music coincidences. So let's get started with Greg telling us something. Tell us some music coincidences, and let's see what that stimulates in the rest of us.
Okay. Yeah, I've had a lot. There's the simple coincidences, which is there's something going on in your life, and all of a sudden there's a song that comes on the radio, and the lyrics are lining up of what's going on in your life. And I will tell you, I have 1 or 2 of those songs, and when you hear them again, it sort of being in my 70s, takes you back a few decades, but it's amazing. Those songs are very powerful. If you're out to dinner with your partner, you guys share some music together, share some songs together, and you're out to dinner, and all of a sudden in the background comes on a song that has a meaning to your relationship. And so that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. A friend of ours, her aunt passed away recently, and as they are approaching the funeral home to attend the service, her aunt's favorite song comes on the radio. It was the theme from A Summer Place was her aunt's favorite song. And yeah, it kind of blew them away. Last August, here at the cafe, at a cafe meeting, the presenter referenced music from The Sound of Music, which was interesting because the next day we were flying to Austria. My wife's in a music group that was going to perform at the Salzburg Music Festival, and which was made famous by the movie The Sound of Music. So that was kind of cool. We had a breakout session, and the person in the breakout session had been to Salzburg. I was talking about their tour of the Sound of Music sites and talked about going to the gazebo, where there was a scene in that movie at the gazebo between two of the characters. And I just sort of popped up and said, well, that's interesting because my wife in her younger years, when she was an actress, played the role of Liesel in that scene in The Sound of Music. So there was a little connection there. On my phone, I have over 500 songs in a variety of artists and types of music. I always play it on shuffle, so I'm always getting something different. But as you can imagine, it might have delivered a few coincidences over the years. I have about maybe a dozen, maybe up to 20 songs which have some meaning to me in my life. And when my COVID projects was Ancestry, to kind of figure out the family history a little bit more, document that. And my dad's family settled in Hartford, Wisconsin. And they have a library there that has files on all the families that settled there. So I'm driving back to Hartford, approaching north of Chicago, approaching the Illinois-Wisconsin state line, and all of a sudden 4 of those songs that have meaning in my life in Wisconsin come on, and I'm kind of blown away by that. And so across state line, not much for a while, about another hour and a half to drive, and then I get to Hartford, Wisconsin, and I get to the sign that says "Welcome to Hartford," and a song called "Coming Home" comes on, and I'm just like blown away with the synchronicity of this is where my family came to America 150 years ago. And, I'm coming back to check out the history, and it says "Coming Home." So with all these musical coincidences I've had, maybe it's because most of my personal life happened because I picked up a guitar and formed a rock and roll band. That all began on February 9th, 1964, and that's when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan. And just before they appeared on Ed Sullivan, I got a phone call. One of our neighbors need their sidewalk shoveled. And this would have been my first paying job. They said, "Greg, do you want to shovel our walk?" And I said, "Okay, fine." And they gave me $2. Saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and used some of that $2 to go buy my first 45 RPM record, "She Loves You." So that started my desire for rock and roll fame. Like I said, picked up guitar, formed a band, and probably the closest we ever got to it. We opened twice for the band Badfinger. Badfinger was the first band that Beatles signed to their Apple Records. And their bass player, Tommy Evans, right after our second performance with him, came up to me and says, "Oh, he's playing his bass guitar was formerly owned by Paul McCartney." So that was kind of cool. And so fast forward to today, where I live, there's a club called the Beatlemaniacs. And I play guitar there. And every Friday we have a session, a 2-hour session. And we close each session with a song, "She Loves You." So that is sort of a full circle thing in regards to how I got started in all this and where I am today. But interestingly enough, a couple of years ago, when I was getting into the cafe and reading a lot of books on synchronicity, including Bernie's, Dr. Ken Harris wrote a book, and I noticed in his book, his grandmother's last name, Carr, Carr, is the same as my wife's. So I sent him a note, and we got communicating. He calls me one Friday morning just before the this Beatles meeting, Beatlemaniac meeting, and so we chat about the potential relationship. But I said, I got to go. I said, but then before I go, I said, let me tell you a quick story. So I told him the coincidence story about she loves you. And so, okay, I got to go. Hang up. And of course, what's the first song that comes up in my music shuffle when I start the car? Of course, it's She Loves You. So I texted Ken right after that on that whole thing. Like I said, everything in my personal life has to do with picking up, playing guitar in a rock and roll band and all the people I met. And that ultimately resulted in also a daughter, and whose husband, my daughter Erin, her husband Justin, is a recording engineer, sound engineer for the networks up in the New York area. But he's got a good friend, Randy Merrill. And who is Randy Merrill? Well, he just turns out to be Paul McCartney's master recording engineer for his last albums. Randy's also won Grammys for Adele, because he's Adele's and Taylor Swift's and Harry Styles' master recordings and other people. So that's all kind of cool. But this long story that started almost 60 years ago, earlier this year, our Beatlemaniacs group sponsored a concert of Peter Asher. And who is Peter Asher? Some of you might know. There was a group, Peter, or a duo, Peter and Gordon, back in the 1960s. They had their number one hit, first hit was World Without Love, and it was written by Paul McCartney. Well, how did Peter connect with Paul? Well, Paul happened to be living in the Asher household, and he was also dating his sister, actress Jane Asher. This is during the heydays of the beginning of the Beatles and whatnot. So Paul was living in the Asher household. So the Asher piano, the Beatles, John Lennon and Paul McCartney banged out a bunch of their early hits on the Asher piano, and that piano is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we're sponsoring this concert with him, and Peter, after Peter and Gordon was done, he became the head of music for Apple Records, and he signed Badfinger to Apple. And then after that, he went on to be a producer and manager. He went to Los Angeles for Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, and a whole bunch of others. So this concert was kind of cool because it sort of continued my long story. And so, which has been going on for, like I said, for almost 60 years. So I did pay the extra money for the meet and greet. And so I met Peter and got the chance to tell him about our connections, and he smiled and nodded, and that was pretty much about it. But it sort of, like I said, I haven't met Paul McCartney yet, but it keeps going. So my last little story here, sort of my exclamation point story. The month that I joined the cafe 2 years ago, we had our neighbors over for to show them or for a visit, and they said, let's show you. We showed them our videos, my wife's video of her music career and my music career. So we said, we'll show them the videos, and my wife's brother was our lead singer's husband. And there's a long story that goes along with all that, but I said if our lead singer, if she had not passed the audition or had not answered the ad in the paper, I said, we might not be here today. So they leave. I come back after they leave. I go to my computer and bring up my emails. And for the first time in over probably 20 years, 20 some odd years, whatever, I get an email from Barb, our lead singer, and she has the videos we were just showing our neighbors attached. And so that's a 50-year story. The Beatles thing is a 60-year story. But these are things that are woven for all these years connected to music. And just another little one, the Juliet, when she sent out the intro to the introduction to this meeting, she has a picture of me there with a guitar. And that's from in Milwaukee, they have Summerfest, which is they build as the world's largest music festival, and we're playing the rock stage, and that was 40 years ago last week. And we're playing the rock stage, and the headliner that night on that was the up and coming band REM. And 10 years later, they became famous and also became my daughter's favorite band. And I didn't know that. I said, oh, by the way, I said, she's buying their albums, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, I said, they're the, let me tell you about what your dad did in front of playing in front of REM many years ago. So anyways, those are a variety of stories, all of which I've experienced. There's a few more, but I think that's enough to get everybody started and get everybody thinking about their own music coincidences. And so that's all I got.
That's quite a bit you got. That's quite a bit you got, and some good stories, and better the connections you have had are quite remarkable. And Paul McCartney just stands out in the middle. And
right.
Can't Buy Me Love is what I'm going to add to it. The Beatles did a lot of love songs, a lot of songs about love, and there you had Peter, then Peter and what you call it, the
Peter Asher, yeah.
World Without Love. I mean, you hit a lot of them, and we're going to now see what you tell each other in the breakout groups that Ken Bell is going to organize for us, where it could be coming on the radio, something you're thinking about, like somebody's thinking about marrying somebody, and her grandmother's favorite song comes on the radio, and that says she should marry the guy, which may not would have been a good idea. So it's important to remember the coincidence of suggestions and not commands. So let's get into our breakout groups, and please tell each other your stories, and we're going to come back after the breakout groups, and some of you will be able to tell us what happened in your breakout groups. And sometimes there's really great coincidences, as many of you know, between and among the people in the breakout group. So let's do the random thing, Ken, and see what happens.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dr. Beitman. I'm going to pause our recording before we do that. So everything you say in the breakout will not be recorded.
Groups. Now, welcome back from your breakout groups. And so we have a bit of time to be able to have you tell some of the stories out of your breakout groups. And I'm going to ask David, who is in my group, to start it off.
Okay. Bernie and I go way back, sort of, a little bit. And so we were talking about music in ours. And I was talking about some of my favorite Woodstock and other things. But I also mentioned just how empowering music is for me, and what a wonderful energy I usually feel with music. And this morning, before the cafe, I was actually traveling to go pick up some vegetables, and on the way back, this song came on the radio, which was David Bowie, "Let's Dance." And I was explaining, just what a great feeling that was. It was just a good primer for the cafe, and I was really rocking and ready to go. So I was talking about this, and I got interrupted in my little discussion by Dr. Beitman. I don't know. Can you tell the details of what you brought up?
Yeah. So he says David Bowie and "Let's Dance." So I interrupted and said, "Wait a minute. A couple of weeks ago, I got a message from some videographers and photographers, two guys, one from Philadelphia, one from London. Could we come down tomorrow and film you?" And it turned out to be a Friday that they came, and we did some Dr. Coincidence photography and video. And I said, "Want to go to dance?" Because I go to dance on Friday nights. And they said, "Sure, we love to dance." So they came to dance with their equipment, and they were hanging around doing their thing. And at dance, we had a breakout group, and the breakout group, we had a closing circle rather. And the closing circle, the guy said, "Can we film Bernie dancing with somebody?" And film the rest of you. And there was general agreement that it was okay to do that. But there was a little argument about what song to be able to dance to. And I wanted Grateful Dead's Uncle John's Band, but most of them wanted to have David Bowie's Let's Dance. So let's hear some other stories.
I'm going to put everyone in gallery view so we can see everyone's faces. Does anyone want to raise their hand? Okay, I see John Townley. John, I'm going to put a spotlight on you.
All right. Well, we unmuted and everything. Yeah, sure. It's a Paul McCartney story. Actually, for those, I understand there's a couple of astrologers in the room here as well, and they probably know that if you have degree areas of the 360 degrees of, if you have your sun, say, on someone else's ascendant within a degree, then you will they'll tend to come into your life more, or do things that affect you, or you'll wind up at the same place at the same time. It's sort of a shepherding effect. And I had that happen with, well, twice with the Beatles, and once when I got wiped out by, when I was in the Magicians on Columbia Records, and they put out the third of our singles, and we'd gotten wiped out by Bob Dylan and Barbra Streisand. I mean, actually, it was Simon and Garfunkel before. And then we got wiped out by the Circle, and we wondered how on earth did we get wiped out by the Circle, and it turned out that they were managed by the Beatles, Brian Epstein, and then it was clear why, and they'd been second act to the Beatles. But that was 66, and so shift on to 1970, and I have a single going out here's the link. The link is that Paul McCartney has 26 degrees of Gemini Sun, and I had 26 degrees Gemini of ascendant. So I'd always noticed that, and I thought, well, maybe it's why I like his music so much. So we had a single out on Vanguard, or about to come out, called Just Another Day. This is 1970, after the Beatles had broken up and Wings was just starting. And so my song comes out Just Another Day on Vanguard, and that same week out comes Another Day by Wings. And the horror of this is, because synchronicity isn't always favorable, but it's just there. It's just there. Is that that song was originally titled Just Another Day. That was McCartney's song, and they changed the title of it in order not to get mixed up with a song they knew was coming out on Vanguard. So they changed it to Another Day instead of Just Another Day, and of course, our single got wiped out as a result, and Wings started as a result. So that's my Paul McCartney synchronicity story, and it happened in the same week, and it absolutely was connected in more than just synchronicity. It was actually part of the astrological part of those bits of information that when they overlap, all kinds of things happen, and that was one that certainly put me out of a lot of work. But Wings is good, and Paul McCartney's still going, so we love it.
Yeah, good example of how synchronicities ain't so wonderful sometimes.
That's right.
So other people want to report what happened in your breakout groups?
Yeah, I just raised my hand. DELIA.
Okay,
SKYE.
Ken,
DELIA SKYE.
so go ahead.
I'll spotlight you.
Yeah, okay. Well, in my group, it became pretty clear when Nina shared first about her synchronicity or her coincidence, that she and I we're closely connected. It turns out we're both from Raleigh, North Carolina, from the eastern part of the state. We found that out later. And she was relating her story about a very strong, powerful song that guided her through a divorce. And my experience was very much the same. as I was in a training by the government in Washington, D.C. in my 20s. And it lasted 15 full days in a hotel with a break in the middle. And then when I walked out at the end, I knew that I was going to be divorcing. And the song that was out at that time, now Nina's song, but Nina's song was The Power of Love. The song that influenced me so much after that exit from that 15 days of powerful training was Karen Carpenter's Top of the World. And I heard it on the radio every day, and I was just jumping out of my skin. I was so elated. And then fast forward to the last 10 years, that song came back to me through a website and a foundation that I am deeply involved with called the Law of Time. And the Law of Time is based on the principle of synchronicity. And so the website or some of the postings, they have used Karen Carpenter's Top of the World, looking down on creation, as a way to really realize what it means to live a life of flow and through different cycles, like we're in the 13th moon cycle of the turtle. The turtle is the sign of presence. Every moment, every day is color, tones, vibrations, etc. So the Law of Time, of course, does post as Top of the World once in a while with Karen Carpenter singing on stage. And it's really quite a reminder of what I came here to do, my mission at this time. And it's very fun. So thank you, Nina, for sharing that.
Thank you. We're on top of the world. And from the top of the world, we hear the Synchronicity Fairy.
Yeah, right.
Well, speaking of the Synchronicity Fairy, I think she's got her hand raised. So
Yeah, that's what they're calling on the Synchronicity Fairy.
yeah, all right.
Hi. I was going to say something different, but when my mom had pancreatic cancer and knew she was dying, I called her up one day and she said, "What are you doing, Mom?" And she said, "I'm listening to all of my music one last time." When she said that, it really hit me, because I just couldn't even imagine just, how important music is, and to just hear it for the very last time. Like how do you take in a song knowing it's the last time you hear it? And she was going through her whole catalog in alphabetical order. And the song that called her on, she was listening to, was Top of the World by Karen Carpenter. And the last thing she said to me was, "I'll see you in the stars," because she didn't really have any religious type of stuff. And then we played that song at her funeral. So that just got me. But that and then to tie in, our breakout group had so many things also involving Paul McCartney. You guys, look what I'm wearing today. Here's the thing: as I was deciding, this is going to be about music today. Beatles are one of my favorite bands. My grandmother, when she passed away, I went up to her gravesite, Rainbow, the whole thing. Let It Be was playing. The next time I went, Let It Be was playing. There's a huge connection with my grandmother with Let It Be. So I'm going to really condense this story for time. But basically, I knew that I was going to be going to a Paul McCartney concert a few years later. And I wanted to have a tattoo of Let It Be on my body while I went to the concert. In case I were to meet him, I wanted to be able to show him, like, look, this is how much I like it put on my body. Anyway, and so I decided I'm going to get that tattoo on my grandmother's birthday to commemorate all of this, because it was a few days before the concert. And so this morning when I woke up to be like, God, there's so many synchronicities. What am I going to do? And it just hit me over the head. It's like, oh, duh, your biggest synchronicity story of all time is probably your Let It Be story. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good one, I guess, because of the other stuff. But then I looked down at the freaking date in my memories on Facebook came up. Today is the day 10 years ago I got my Let It Be tattoo. To the day again, when I saw that it was actually my grandmother's birthday.
Oh God, I don't know. I can't deal with these people. I can't do it's not any good.
Wait, is that me? Oh, anyway, that's my story. And then everyone else in the breakup group also had a lot of Paul McCartney. So thank you for letting me share. And this is just so beautiful. You guys have given me so much love and tears and beauty today. So thank you.
Well, thank you, the Synchronicity Fairy. So Annie Olson, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Bernie, a question. Did you get my email?
Yes.
Okay. So like I shared with Bernie in an email, when the thing came for music, it blew me away, and especially about it having a long trail. So in our breakout session, I did share with the two men that I was with, Chris and Carl. And one, Carl, is from Slovakia, I think, and Australia. So it was amazing. He said he loved what I said about orchestration. So the long and the short of it, I had a vision for a screenplay in '93. And when I had that vision, I was nudged that John Denver, this man I'd been nudged to pray for 19 years before, should write the music. And when I got to the last scene, I couldn't get the right symbol. And when I heard John sing the song Eagles and Horses, I knew that Black Elk's symbol was a horse. And I realized there's so much going on in our world, bringing us all together. So here we all are. This is why the cafe means so much to me, because my life has been enormous synchronicity.
Well, thank you very much for that.
So
I'd like to be able to ask Karen, because we're going to close pretty
if
soon.
you post my,
I'm sorry, but I wanted to get to
Okay.
Karen too, because she had her hand up. But thank you very much for that. I'm glad the cafe means so much to you. I felt that in my heart as you said that. So Karen, you'll be our last one before our next thing.
Okay. Love hearing all the stories because it brings up so much. So this is perfect. But in our group, so I was with John and with Juliet, but Juliet and I had very similar stories about being at a festival and seeing a queue, a line of people, and let's just get in the line and see what happens. Seeing some of our favorite people perform. And I think it was just, it was really interesting, the magic of us just entering a line to see what happens, and then ending up in front of, right in front of the people we were there to see, two different, bands or performers, but taking a chance and being open to the magic, and magic happened. So I thought it was really interesting. Juliet and I had very similar stories that way. And that was it.
Thank you. And being open to the magic, and the magic happens. That's an important part of it. So thank each of you. And I'm sorry that we can't get to everyone, but we did have enough time to hear some really good stories. And especially important are the ones that happen among and between us, like On Top of the World was one of those wonderful connections among and between. So thank you all for your stories. And we're going to have some more opportunity to tell other ones in our next breakout group. But first, I'm going to tell a coincidence story, not of mine, but one that is in my book, and one that is fun to be able to think about. And Juliet likes this one too. Michael Shermer is a pseudo skeptic, which means he knows what's right, and anything that doesn't fit with the way he thinks is wrong. It's not that he's open. A good skeptic is someone who is open to possibilities and will consider them. But he had a problem. He's an American science writer and founder of the Skeptic Society and its editor-in-chief. He is not prone to giving what he calls pseudoscientific and supernatural claims any credence. But he came out of the closet of sorts in October of 2014 when he wrote an article for Scientific American. He can write for Scientific American. I can't, because he knows what we're talking about here is wrong. That's why, and that supports their belief about the way reality works. And he wrote, "I just witnessed an event so mysterious that it shook my skepticism." Had to be pretty significant. He was about to marry Jennifer Graf from Cologne, Germany. She had been raised by her mother. Her grandfather, Walter, was the closest father figure she had growing up, but he died when she was 16. His 1978 Philips transistor radio was part of a collection of his belongings that Jennifer had kept, and which Michael had set out to try to bring back to life after decades of muteness, unsuccessfully. So he put the radio at the back of the desk drawer in their bedroom. Michael and Jennifer's marriage took place on June 25th, 2014, at Michael's home. Being now 9,000 kilometers from family, friends, and home, Jennifer was feeling lonely. She had wanted her grandfather, Walter, to give her away. Then, just as the ceremony was about to begin, they heard music playing in the bedroom. They followed the sound to the desk in their bedroom. When Jennifer opened the desk drawer and pulled out her grandfather's transistor radio, it was playing a love song. My grandfather is here with us," she said, tearfully. "I'm not alone." Later that night, they fell asleep to the sound of classical music coming from Walter's radio. The radio stopped working the next day and has remained silent ever since. So now we'll go to our next breakout group, and hopefully that will stimulate some more discussion and stories from you. And then we'll come back after 15 minutes and debrief, telling us some more of the stories and hopefully some of the ones that are interconnecting each of you with others. So Ken?
Okay, I'm going to pause our recording now.
So let's see. So let's hear some more laughing for the recording. And then let's please raise your hand if you want to tell us a story about what happened in your breakout group. Keep it in mind. So Nina, but keep in mind, my favorite ones, and they may not be yours, are the ones that are coincidences among and between the people in the group. So Nina, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I have that, but I was thinking about the connection between when someone's died and you feel like, where are they? And that kind of connection that someone had mentioned. And when I was getting married to the love of my life, I was choreographing a dance in my room, same room each night. And this bird appeared right outside in a branch. And in the branch, it was a cardinal, but it had, if you know what molting is, it was molting. So it didn't have hair, it didn't have feathers on its head. Typically a cardinal is very dramatic with a big peak of red. So it was sitting there watching me do choreography, and it happened more than one day. And the bird reminded me of my father when he was dying. He lost all his hair. So I was looking at this bird thinking, you can't be at my wedding. I know you want to be, but you're present watching me do this choreography. I know you'll be there in some kind of form. And it was real for me. And just recently, this same kind of cardinal, many years later, is sitting on my deck every morning, and it's molting also just on its head. You know, birds molt everywhere, but it's only on its head. It's very odd to see a bird molting. And I just think, hey, Dad, you're hanging around again. It's good to have you near me.
Well, thanks, Nina. And a cardinal is not uncommon. And our Lisa Buxbaum is in our board member has dramatic stories about red cardinals and her father. So next, Krista.
Hello, everyone. So good to see all these beautiful faces. And I was blessed to be in a room with Juliet, which was exciting because I've been wanting to catch up with her and her travels. So she shared a beautiful story about a video that she was recording, a music video in Cozumel. Was it Cozumel, Juliet? Yes. And which also involved another one of our Synchronicity members, and just the opportunity she had to perform live at this goddess temple, and the chills she got, and the energies and the ancestors that surrounded her, because they were just loving and enjoying the music she was bringing to this temple. And it was really inspiring. I actually got goosebumps as she was telling the story. And it inspired me to tell the story of I've been house sitting and doing a lot of fasting and meditation and contemplation of my higher self. And the other day I was sitting on the grass and I said to my higher self, what is your name? And the name Athena came. And this was really strange to me, because I'm all about, when I pull goddess cards, it's always Irene, who's the goddess of peace. And I'm about peace and loves, and I'm launching a healing hugs tour. So I'm all about that, love. And a couple hours later, I came across this video, and it was channeled by, it was about Kundalini energy and rising, and it was channeled by a woman who channeled under the name Athena in Truth. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. 2 in one day, Athena. And then I was talking to my partner G in the evening, and I told him about this story, and he was like, oh, that makes complete sense. You're like totally an Amazon goddess of war. Like, I'm like, war? That doesn't make sense to me. But what I read in there was Athena never took a lover. She also never got hugged. And so I feel like in this life, I'm like playing out this polarity of Athena by launching this healing love and hug and peace tour. And then, having the opposite, just really being all about peace. So that was fun, interconnected synchronicities. And then Juliet shared that the oracle cards that I had pulled this morning and had posted to my Bring Your Own Magic community group were highly relevant to her in India. And they were a star ancestor and an animal guardian, and they ended up using those for their journey for the day. So it was really fun to have those kind of cross the world synchronicities between the two of us, and fun to have the time to catch up.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. So Nancy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So many synchronicities, and I'll try to keep this succinct. Within the group, so in my first group, Anne was speaking of some synchronicities that she has with music and her daughter, and how when she's feeling a certain way or thinking about certain things, her daughter, who is a songwriter, tends to come up with these songs that really match what she's feeling during the time. So she has this connection with her daughter. So while she was telling that story, I was thinking about my own connection that I have with
one of my daughters in particular, I have twins who are 27. And I always know when it's her on the phone, I'll think of her and she will call or text me. It's very, very predictable. The other one, not so much. So this discussion came up within the second group. And as I was talking about this, the other, I believe it was Jess, relayed how she has the same thing with her daughter as well, who is 28, and they are connected by being born on the same day. And she said she knew that her daughter was going to be born on her birthday. Now, I didn't share this within the group, but I knew I was having twins before I had them. I was in the shower and I knew I was having twins. And sure enough, when I had my first ultrasound, they said it's twins, and I didn't believe them. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, how did I know that? I just knew. So I'll add the synchronicity. So as we're having these discussions, my daughter, who I'm very well connected with, sent me a text as you know, we're discussing these things. And then I just now got a text from my other daughter independently. So, you know, there's definitely some synchronicities going on there. So thank you for letting me share.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. These connections of our minds with each other are so important to recognize happen. Any other hands raised? I don't see any more. People might want to tell us something.
Wayne Henry's
Wayne,
got
I
his
see
hand
Wayne
up.
Henry.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Come off mute, Wayne. Sure to hit mute. Come back off. We can hear you.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Wayne.
There you
go
are.
ahead. Go ahead, Wayne.
I thought since I'm a twin, that was a cue to speak up and out with her last story. So I'm a twin. I was born second in 1986. And we're quite different. I've been quite different than, but anyhow, I want to talk about the groups that I noticed synchronicities in both groups, the music. I chimed in about the XM radio on the first group and how that really connected all of us, and us merchant seamen who were used to being at sea for so long with just our thoughts, and how the musical spheres kind of opened up with XM radio, which was right after 9/11, you know, a year after. And then I was just on the second group, I met a man and a couple talking about the synchronicity. One man knew exactly where I grew up in Reedville, Virginia. He immediately knew it was a Menhaden fisheries. And then the other lady, I forget the name, I'm sorry. Her and another gentleman was with her. They were visiting the Chesapeake Bay. And just the vibes I got from them, that they understood just how not only connected our minds are, but our with the trees and the ocean and the animals and the stars. And so it was just reassuring in both breakout groups to find people that can authentically relate and embody that spirit that, you know, for me, like, consciousness is not confined to the brain. That's been my biggest work. And I study that through geometry and time and space and navigating the stars. So I'm breaking out in a way because I've been kept to myself in my studies and my thoughts for years now. And this is like, you know, my favorite quote, Dr. Beitman, I like when he says he's a recovering academic, because anytime I went to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I immediately knew intuitively that we couldn't connect. And I see a lot more soulful people here that allows me to open up and connect. And I have so many stories that are just so meta coincidentally connected that they seem crazy. They seem schizophrenic. They seem all these things. And I know that people are experiencing the same thing. And just Dr. Beitman, thank you for bringing all this together.
You're welcome. And I love meta-coincidences. I wrote about them in my book, and it's a good subject. We have time enough for Sue and our last one. So Sue, please tell us as briefly as you can, because we're going to have to stop in a bit.
Right. Thank you. I just wanted to say that we had a really exceptional second group. Well, both of the groups I was in were really exceptional, but I had in the first group told a very short story that I had 2 stories with music, and I just thought, well, let me throw this one into the first group for, just a gut feeling. And in the second group, as I waited, the other 2 people, Mary Kay and Thomas, went first, and both of them in their musical coincidence spoke of their a death of a loved one, both of their fathers. And then as Mary Kay was second, as she was telling about her, the links there, she actually mentioned one of the songs that I was about to mention, and it just almost kind of knocked me over. But then so when I started to talk, I thought I was going to kind of fall a little to pieces, because I had chosen, I left the second story as to be one of a passing of a loved one, and how after they passed, I was in a vet office, and these 3 songs came up, which almost in sequence were kind of like, here it's me, and then I'm leaving, he had left Earth, really. And the last one was a very meaningful song. All of them were very meaningful for our experience together. We had been involved in a West Side Story in high school together, and it was Somewhere There'll Be a Place for Us. And so it was as if he was saying, I remember you, and I'll see you again. And the second song was the one that Mary Kay had brought up, which I'd almost thought I couldn't remember. I knew it was 3 songs, and then it dawned on me before the breakout, and I had brought it up on my computer, and then she mentioned it, and I realized, and was saying, if I hadn't remembered by the time we had gotten together, you would have reminded me. So very incredible moments.
These, thanks, Sue. The ones that happen among and between us are just illustrations of how we're creating in part a group mind among us with a group heart. I don't want to, as we're going to go with our next cafe, it's going to be about compassion and nature, with Juliet being one of the co-leaders, and the heart and the mind are driving each other and making this visible and experiential to us here in this group. So thank you, each of you and all of you, for being with us today. And I put in the chat the link to being able to donate, because as we mentioned, we need to be able to have some cash to be able to keep this thing going, and any amount that you can donate would be very much appreciated. So please consider that, and please keep us in your heart and mind, and we'll see you next time, where we're going to see more of what we've heard some today about, of how we're linked, not just with each other, but we're creating something here with the cafe. We are also linking up with others, and the others include the animals and the plants, and for me, particularly the trees that are out there, as well as Earth itself. So thank you all for being here. We're going to close right now, and Ken, please, you can stop the recording, but some of us will stay on for a little bit afterwards. Again, thank you for being with us.